Welcome to Strength Chat Podcast, presented by Kabuki Strength. Introducing your hosts, Chris Duffin, the mad scientist of strength, Rudy Cadlow, mature athlete and coach, and the wizard of training himself, Brandon Sen.
Welcome to Strength Chat with your host, the mad scientist of strength, Chris Duffin. To my right, the man with no voice, Brady Cable. To my left, the wizard of training, Brandon Sen. Also, lacks all sprinting abilities known to man.
No, I can sprint.
Huh. No, you can't.
I can.
Yeah. So, today, we're really excited to talk to Greg Walsh of Wolf Brigade Gym. Sorry, I just completely butchered a very simple name, but, you know.
Wolf Brigade Gym?
Thank you, Brandon. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Let's give Brady a chance to enunciate.
Go ahead, Brady.
Wolf Brigade.
What was that?
What?
That was worse.
That was totally planned. Let's not make this a trend through this show.
Whoa, trend?
So, for our listeners who may not know Greg, Greg has been collaborative with us for, at least a year, maybe a year and a half, on some swinging videos, content on mace swinging itself. And I just want to talk a little bit about Greg's history. And Greg comes from an action sport background, BMX riding, I believe, and then was one of the early adopters of CrossFit. I think down in California. Is that right, Greg?
Yeah, Long Beach. Yep. We had CrossFit Long Beach starting in 2003,
and now has his own facility back on the East Coast. And you know, Greg has a great concept around basically movement and strength and conditioning, and how to put that together for basically your everyday person, and this aligns really well with, you know, what we believe in here at Kabuki Strength. Obviously, we're very strength oriented, but our philosophy is, you know, helping people live better through strength. And I believe Greg is a little bit further along on the transitional piece of that, and, you know, taking that to a very functional level. So, Greg, can you tell us a little bit about your history and how you arrived with where you're at today?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So action sports, BMX, that was something I did my whole life. You know, you fall down a lot, whether you're good at it or not. So I'd been injured a bunch, and also got into martial arts as a young adult. So banged up in kind of two different areas, and then 2002, 2003, started doing more kind of legitimate strength and conditioning training. I'd broken my right wrist twice. So like a barbell front rack for me was a real challenge. So even just early intros into CrossFit, something like a power clean, something like front squatting, I was already looking for adaptations to that, because I'd been kind of broken down, and a lot of the mobility style information that's available now wasn't really available then.
No, it wasn't.
So it was kind of hunt for yourself and stuff like that. So I adopted kettlebells as a strength tool really pretty early on. And of course, they're never going to be pound for pound as heavy as the barbell, but even back then, 2003 or so, the goal was to mimic weight and function of a barbell without the need for a front rack. So for me, getting injured in BMX transitioned me into strength and conditioning and CrossFit, but my physical limitations in quotes, of course, transitioned me into having to adapt the process. So that's where kettlebells and maces came in. I was more in tune with and interested in an adaptive strength, as opposed to, I guess, more of like a pure strength. Like I knew from my perspective, and the people I was training and people I was training with, none of us were ever going to be 800-pound deadlifters. So we needed a more expert generalism. So we needed to be able to do a bunch of things well, and at weights that made sense. So of course we wanted to lift heavy, but it wasn't the ultimate primary goal.
And I think that fundamentally that's really what we believe in and promote here at Kabuki Strength. Personally, we're powerlifters, right?
Yep.
And that's our testing grounds for ourselves. But we believe fundamentally, like, using the tools and approach, and including and assessing and correcting movement in these manners, will make you a better, more functional human being and transfer athleticism to a variety of other things. But, like taking your squat from 500 to 520 isn't going to make you a better football player. But being athletic and strength training and doing it in the proper ways is going to help you do that and ensure that you don't destroy your back or anything else in the process, right?
Well, that's right. I mean, I think that's why even when I saw that you'd begun with the maces, that's why I was interested in connecting. Is that the overall philosophy doesn't have to change with the end goal being a little bit different. So of course, you and I are going to have a very different end of the day training goal, but the things that lead up to that aren't going to look a hell of a lot different. Our arms might move a little bit differently, but a lot of the accessory stuff, a lot of the range of motion stuff, and especially a lot of the positional cues and the mobility stuff, it's all the same. Simply because it's all just really simple stuff, and it doesn't need 50 incarnations.
No, that's the crazy thing. People somehow think it is something completely different. And it's not.
That could be 2 hours on its own, I suppose. But once we started figuring out what worked and what didn't. For our personal training, it made it a lot easier to start adapting a program a little less textbook, I guess. So at that point, a lot of people were still doing workouts off the CrossFit main site, and even for our people, and some of them were really strong people, that just wasn't working. We learned early that it was going to be the volume, not the intensity, that broke these people down. You can go hard and fast and heavy, but you can't do it for 40 minutes 4 times a week unless that's your goal. If you're training to compete and that type of thing, then you've got to smash that type of volume in at all costs. But if you're just trying to be strong and powerful and adaptive and then not in a permanent state of adrenal fatigue with a ton of injuries, you can't do that.
You mean that's not necessarily the best?
So anyway,
sorry.
that was kind of our that was our process. Is more didn't have to be more. It just had to be smarter. And so that's ultimately, when I came back here in 2008 and began Wolf Brigade, that's really the foundation of Wolf Brigade is detail oriented strength and conditioning. Detail oriented does not mean paralysis by analysis. It does not mean slower. It does not mean lighter. It does not mean less aggressive. It just means more mindful and specific and technical. And very simply, the best way to describe it is it's like learning a martial art in a way. You're not going to come in and I think I even said this one time, unless you're just a legendary asshole, you're not going to go into a good martial arts gym and spar on your first day. It's the same with strength and conditioning. You're not going to get in there and lift with you guys the first day that you go into a gym. In the same way you shouldn't go in there and to an untrained person, you shouldn't have a barbell over your head the first day you do anything.
Well, we do something, and what we talk about is if you're going to do something, even if it's a body weight like movement, like we preach doing it with intent and purpose.
That's it.
Way different than going through the motions. It doesn't mean, not putting in the work. It doesn't mean not lifting heavy. It doesn't mean not putting in the volume. But if you're going to do it with intent and with a purpose.
I mean, the podcast could literally be 30 seconds long, and it could be that. If people would just kind of remember that, but then I think the reverse engineering of that is that coaches don't feel that basic is valuable, so they try and overcomplicate and mystify and over describe and over program and all this kind of stuff. And I totally understand that, because as you guys know, there's a tinkering process that just it's fun and interesting and all this kind of stuff. But in that tinkering, you got to know what to throw the fuck out. You can't tinker and keep everything you try, because not everything is good.
Yep.
I mean, the amount of stuff that we've tried and the amount of stuff in the last 12 whatever years now at this point that I've tried and dumped. I mean, I would confidently say probably exceeds what most coaches have ever tried and kept. So Yeah, I agree. Intent and purpose, man.
And so for our listeners that want to see a little bit about what Greg does, I encourage you to check out some of the social media stuff on Instagram. Greg posts up some shorts of some of the movement stuff that they do. He'll post up some, snapshots of, philosophy, what's on the wall at their gym for their workouts. And we'll talk about some other resources later in the program here where you actually can view specifically what they're doing. But let's talk a little more specific, like what walk us through like what some of your fundamentals and what your programming looks like right now.
Yes. So realistically, we'll take it from like a new trainee. So someone walks in to begin training with us. It could be John Jones. It could be you. It could be a person who's never done any type of fitness in the world. They're going to run through privately our curriculum priorities list. If people have done this type of training, they're going to breeze through a lot of it because they've done a lot of it. But even in breezing through it, it lets us see them move. It lets them get comfortable in the environment. And ultimately, we're able to make tiny adjustments to people that they may not have caught on their own. I have people that are training for us take me through that list quarterly because there's things I'm going to miss because I train by myself most of the time. So from a new trainee perspective, we run them through that basic list. Once that's safe, doesn't have to be great, of course. That's a work in progress. But then they're cleared for action, and then they can participate in our group classes. As far as movement standards and things like that, one of the things that we're biggest on, and it's the same things that you guys go through, is the breathing, bracing, making sure that we're overly appropriately tensioned. There's no such thing as a successful casual lift. And that translates to every
anything,
single thing.
Yeah.
And so what I've gotten, I think above average good at is tricking people into tension until they're strong enough to do it on their own. And that's where we found the mace to be so valuable. The length of that lever can trick people into moving perfectly until they can do it on their own. So we use a lot of things like extended arm holds, things like the front pendulum to teach like midline stability and like where your hips are and the broadening of the chest. And then as you know too, we're creative but not gimmicky with kettlebells. I feel that at some point people stopped the evolutionary process with kettlebell lifting, and I feel that that's short-sighted. We're finding new ways to lift heavier kettlebells better all the time.
But I've seen some really cool circus tricks from people on Instagram.
And those are a hell of a lot of fun. But even when we put those up, because that's something that I have fun with, I always specify this is more fun than function. And I
have people ask me about some of the odd stuff that I do on occasion. They're like, "What is the purpose behind that? Why should I be integrating that program?" I'm like, "Don't overthink it." I do that because it's fun and I like to do it. That's okay sometimes. That's an okay answer.
Training. I think training should be fun, right?
I think after a while, I think people kind of lose that. And
oh my God.
No, it shouldn't be just the grind, right? So
yeah, that's right. It's sometimes it's fun, sometimes it's function, but it should never be like a catastrophe that people hate and want to run screaming from forever.
The thing I have to do because I have to do it.
Yeah.
If you reach that point, you've lost your way.
That's a point that we make too when it comes to like on days that we're going to test a 2-rep max or days that we're trying to find something for purposes of programming later on, is that until there's money on the line, range of motion and position govern weight. If you've got a partial range completed whatever, and there's nothing on the line except the completion of that lift in a small group in front of no cameras, what's the purpose of that? So that's something that we see a lot is when we take in people that have been to other gyms previously, or when we have people come visit us to train from other places. When things get heavy, it's almost backwards. There's less focus on mechanics and details and more focus on completion. When really, it's just got to be the other way. I mean, more weight equals more details, as you guys well know. I mean, none of the stuff that you guys move is going to move 1 single inch if there's a soft spot in the chain at all.
And for some reason, there's still this viewpoint out there that if you want to move something heavy, everything goes out the window. It's just about getting it done. And somehow that is still pervasive in this day and age, which luckily it's not like the majority of thought process anymore, but we still see somehow people thinking that, if you're going to put everything into it, it means all this doesn't really matter. And it just isn't the case. Yep. I mean, I point out all the time, like, watch me in some of my lifts and my missed lifts. And positioning and stability never, ever compromise. I mean, that's what you're shooting for.
Yep.
That's what makes it happen.
The quality is what insulates the quality. I mean, the overall number on that bar is not going to be impressive to anyone if it hasn't been insulated with all those tiny details leading up to it. And I think one of the things that people get misguided on is when they see, competitive powerlifting, something like that, just based on years of adaptation for powerlifting. You'll see like range of motion in the squat look shorter. You'll see a stand up and a deadlift look shorter. It's going to look different on a competitive powerlifter than it is on a 6 foot tall, 203 pound CrossFitter. But it doesn't mean that the functional finish of that product isn't the same.
Exactly.
So a lot of times I think people are comparing themselves to something that they see versus something that they are. And that's important, man. That's important.
In the last 5 minutes, I think people should almost like rewind and listen to some of the points because you've blown through a lot of things like really fast, even just a few second comments about like, the extended hand position, long lever, the midline stability, the working, like there's so many like really, really like things that with some depth to it that people need to understand.
And we can rewind on any of that stuff. And I mean, and something else that's going to be valuable is one of my big priorities this year is to kind of, I mean, not to say this, not to sound weird, but like to start kind of pulling the veil back a little bit. Like one thing that I was ultra cautious of, just because of the kind of person that I am, and just because I think of how much respect I had for CrossFit when it started, and how differently I feel now, is when we started Wolf Brigade, I wanted to keep it, pretty silent until I was 100% sure that what we had was really what we had. I wanted to make sure that there were things in place that I was really 100% confident on, because I felt like in that general realm of strength and conditioning, there was just a shitload of crappy guesswork going on. And so now that I've seen the process evolve, and now that I've seen how we interact with people like you, and how we interact, but at the other end of the spectrum with injured older athletes, younger athletes. I was a strength and conditioning coach at a Division III college out here for a minute, which was a disaster but useful at the same time. So I've really kind of just tried to like get as deep as I can in the water before we start really giving all the information out in a way that we want to now. So yeah,
you're way behind the game. What you needed to do was, when you're 20 years old with a year and a half of lifting under your belt, get on Instagram and offer your coaching services.
Online coach.
Yeah. And
you
to me,
Greg.
something that's funny that you guys say that is I mean, I think a lot about training, man. I mean, I do a lot of other stuff too, but detail oriented training is something my mind has been on for many years, and the online coaching thing is kind of mysterious to me. I mean, I've tried it with a few people. It's gone well, but maybe it's just the way I'm doing it. But there is no way to make that financially viable if you are doing a good job. In my mind,
it's really well. You can't compete against the other, because they're not offering. It's just a template program, and they're not putting the time.
It's plug and play.
Right?
Yeah.
To do it right, I mean, you've got to evaluate. You've got to watch the videos. You've got to evaluate movement. You've got to do individualized coaching. You've got to review. I mean, it's a process, and people think, that, it's online, it should be cheap, and it's like
Yeah.
It almost more time has to go into it. So
I think what we just discovered is that I'm too neurotic to be a good online coach.
So, Greg, something that you mentioned earlier was getting people, in this initial assessment, getting people lifting safely, and it doesn't have to be perfect, but at least getting them safe. In a lot of the strength and conditioning world, it seems like there is always emphasis on just moving the weight, especially with like power athletes, like football players, and things like that. Typically in universities, there's a lot of emphasis on getting people to move heavier weight instead of just fixing their movement and making them more athletic in that way. Could you talk about a couple of the ways that you guys differ and how you approach that?
Yeah, thank you. So we always use the term composition before completion. So with people, if that particularly doesn't resonate, then what we do is we bring it right back down to the basic details, whether it be an empty bar, whether it be a mace in the front, whether it be something really challenging and underused like a double kettlebell front squat, to kind of really take the ego out of the equation. Yeah. Because when the range starts to fail, or the midline stability fails, or the posture fails, if you have a way to skin each of those cats, unless you've got a really egotistical person, they're gonna pick up what you're laying down.
Yeah.
So you may be able to put a 250-pound bar on a dude, and they may be able to squat it in quotes for 1 or 2 reps, but when you pull that back off and put a 22-pound mace extended 6 inches from their body, all of a sudden they can't keep their torso upright, their midline folds up, and then the same game with a kettlebell in the goblet or a kettlebell in the front squat rack. So the way that we do it is kind of like this like soft-handed spanking. Okay, sure, we know that we can get you to do this if we have to, but instead we're going to do this to make sure that when you want to do it heavier, you're insulated for that weight and intensity. So really it's just having in your toolbox ways to fact find each of those small faults. Yeah. And even something like this is going to be hard to describe without showing, but even something like, you guys know that ice skater where you take like a super wide, it's almost like how you will deadlift, super wide sumo, where you're just driving left and right with a small weight in the middle to see which knee drops earlier, because everybody's got a side that's stronger and a side that's weaker. So we're always just trying to make sure people identify that just because you can get one single rep at a weight that your other gym buddies think is okay, doesn't mean that you're functionally strong in that position.
So, Greg, when someone comes to you first time, you mentioned early on that you have a certain list of priorities that they should be able to accomplish or go through. So what that sounds like is more of like benchmark tests or things that you should be able to do this maybe with this load or in this manner before you can continue here. Can you talk a little bit more to the specifics of the actual curriculum priorities that you offer? Man,
I'm glad you brought that up because that could be really misinterpreted. So instead of what you said, which is a load-based thing, it's really a simple list that starts with pull-up, push-up, hollow, air squat or stick squat or mace squat, lunge, right on down the list. And then as the baseline positions are established as safe, then we start adding in the other thing. Then you'll get into a single kettlebell deadlift, then you'll get into a suitcase deadlift, then you'll get into a kettlebell swing, then you'll get into hinge, and then we start just running through the list in what we feel is a logical linear order, and then by the end, then you're finishing up with things like a power clean, things like kettlebell swing cleans, things like that, and usually it'll take 3 to 4 1-hour sessions to go through that stuff, and we never try and trap people in any sort of like on ramp, like conditioning melee type thing. We want fundamentals intact before they join a group that has their fundamentals intact.
Now, I really like that. So this is something that we discuss in our seminars too, because we obviously have regressions, progressions from that. everybody always wants to go to the hardest one, the end one, and it can be challenging.
For sure.
It can be
For
challenging
sure,
to have them actually go through the ropes appropriately. And what you're talking about is like a systematic way to develop movement, or to ensure that people coming in can actually move appropriately to join the actual group or culture that you have. And that's something that's it's a very interesting topic, and it's. I can imagine that you get people who come in first time and they immediately want to jump into the group and do the hard thing. Is there ever conversations you have to have with people to say we need to start here? Is there ever those? Do you ever find yourself in a tough position with people and having to pull them back?
Occasionally we do, and also I'm glad that you like that thing, and I would love to send you. I'll send you a photo of our curriculum priorities list just so you can see it and look through it. But really what we find is very, very often, more often than not, anyone that's done any type of training anywhere, whether it's on their own or with a high-level coach or in a CrossFit group or anything like that, they come in and they don't think they need the curriculum priorities list. And so it isn't always an ego thing. A lot of times it's just, you fucking eat what you've been fed, man. Mm-hmm. So if you come in and you killed it and you won your workout the other day, why do you need to learn how to do a push-up again? Well, because you're flying down the street with your elbows out and you're doing a push-up like a wiggly worm off the ground with your eyes on the ceiling. That's why.
I got to interject for just a second because, for a number of years when I was leading up our bench training days for our coaching, new person comes in and that's step one was teaching them to push up. And there's like some people, they're like, what do you mean? I'm a big bench. Like, no, you're gonna push up. And you're not moving on until you do a push-up. I need to show, and you'd be surprised at how many people. I mean, you walk into any gym, 98% of them can't do a push-up correctly, and they're laying on a bench trying to bench press. Like,
yep.
Where are we at?
I agree with you, man. And we've got small people and unassuming people doing sets of excellent push-ups, and it's so cool to me. Sometimes I just come in and I see people doing in our place these basic things that they're really taking for granted, and just because I've been around for a minute and I know what I'm looking at. Sometimes I'll just get like really fucking stoked, man, because you've got a girl that maybe 6 months ago, couldn't squat a 15-pound kettlebell in the goblet, doing like an awesome set of legit 15 push-ups, chest to the floor, arms straight to the top. People don't realize how really like rare that is. And then from a diagnostic standpoint, the push-up, man, what doesn't it tell us?
Push-up is incredible.
Do you understand midline stability? Do you have appropriate ankle flexion and extension? Everything you need to know to move on in that list can be told in the first 3 or 4 movements.
If you've got the eye for what's going on, and not to mention that it's a closed chain movement, so we take out a lot of the issues with typical pressing and having to teach how to actually get that shoulder connected through the core and to the floor and all that. All that goes away. It's a closed chain movement. It's a great rehab tool. It's a great strengthening tool. Like I do push-ups. They're, that's
what I mean. And people right now are going, push-ups. They're doing the same thing that we're talking about them doing, which is they're saying push-ups. I can do 60 push-ups. Well, I know 3 people that can do 60 awesome push-ups in a row. They're harder than people think if you do them right.
And it seems like the people that want to ignore these fundamentals and never regress end up getting forced into regression when they get injured a couple months later for moving so poorly for so long.
And that forced regression is an interesting term, man. Yeah. Yep, and people talk about the novice effect all the time, but the novice effect can hit anytime, anywhere. It can hit one of us today if you start getting complacent with those details. But the other thing that we found is that it can hit never if you never get complacent with those details. I've got a really quick video to post tomorrow on our Instagram of one of our great guys goofing around with. We've been doing a stacked grip with the vertical handle on the kettlebells, both because I had a torn rotator and I still wanted to swing the kettlebell, so I couldn't do a neutral grip kettlebell swing. So I did a stacked grip vertical handle kettlebell swing to minimize internal rotation and let my back get more involved. So we started using that for a bunch of different stuff, and he was playing around with it with his kettlebell snatch. and kettlebell snatching 97 pounds with that stack type of grip, and it was just so cool because that was a plateau that he was. I mean, I say plateau in quotes, but like he was going for that 97 pounds, and it wasn't going to work. So we said, it's not the kettlebell snatch that's not working. Let's see if we can put one detail that's safe and proven on it and make it work. And we did, man. So it's his progress was not limited that day because we had access to those details,
That's wonderful. Let's switch gears a little bit. You were talking about early on, you mentioned the lever on the shoulder rock. And of course, I'm a big mace swing fanatic. And that's how we originally got connected.
I love it.
And, people don't seem to quite grasp, like, what the value is of that sometimes. I still get I've got the sledgehammer. Oh, that's cool. It's just like the Indian clubs. And I'm like,
yep.
But it's not. Like,
yep. Yeah.
The lever makes you do things you wouldn't normally do. And part of that, like, it's great for also big guys like me because, like, a lot of them, you need a long lever and you need that weight to actually teach you to relax. And that's the part of, like, put an Indian club in my hand and it won't do any. I can go through the motions, but I'm going through the motions. I'm not, like, going through the relaxation and contraction phases because it's so light for me. I'm going to control it all the time.
That's right. That's right, man. This is the rabbit hole. When I see mace lifting online, with the exception of just an extremely few people, they may be doing a movement that makes some level of sense if it was organized and heavy. But instead, what they're doing is just fighting through that movement and over-tensioning with way too light a weight, and then not getting any value.
They're just doing a kettlebell halo, basically, which is a good move. You're moving through a range of motion, but it is not the same thing. It is not the same thing.
Yes, it's similar but different. They both have their purpose. They both have their value. But the details of the mace are what make it useful or not useful. And it's not mystified, it's not complicated or anything like that, but it's just like anything else. But I think the reason it's misunderstood is it's maybe where barbell lifting was, I don't know, man, 30 years ago, and maybe where kettlebell lifting was maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago.
Which is funny, though, because it's been around like hundreds of years.
200 years, yeah.
I mean,
the skinny Indian wrestlers that have been using these things for conditioning for hundreds of years are some of the most brutal athletes on earth. And if you watch their mechanics, their feet are rooted in the dirt, their backs are flat, their shoulder mobility is sick. There's these videos called the physical body. There's two parts of them. They're on YouTube somewhere. Man, you know what? Maybe we'll try and find them and show them to people. But it's just a bunch of old videos that this guy made of Indians training for wrestling, and they're using these gigantic maces. And as we talked about, they're cylindrical. So the part by your hands is obviously smallest, and then it gets really, really big down by their legs to make them heavier. And what that proves is that the length of the lever, and it's kind of what we did with good idea, bad idea, is if it's moving correctly, the size of the mace at the bottom isn't the issue.
Yeah.
As long as it's long enough.
So this is Greg's referring to an old video that we called Good Idea, Bad Idea. It's on my YouTube channel. But when I was out visiting him a little over a year ago, we put a 45-pound plate on the end of a shoulder rock. That's an 18-inch circle, and both of us swung it. And we did not take extra steps or move our legs or bend at the knees to create space or do anything. And it just to go to show you that, it was good idea, bad idea, because it could go very wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I was really just curious. Like I had done everything up until 33 pounds, which is large, but not like scary.
Yep.
But I just, man, while you guys were there, I just wanted to make sure that was going to work. I had an idea it might, but how do you know till you try?
And we both pulled it off.
Yeah, that's it. No deaths. But back to it. A lot of times, when I'm seeing people using the maces, it's the people that could use it the most that might be addressing the least amount of the details. Like I see a lot of pro fighters and stuff using the mace, perfect. I mean, it is a seamless transition. In my opinion, it's the most seamless implement to grappling and martial arts, because you've got to be tense but relaxed. You've got to be fluid. You're holding on to something that truly does not want to be managed. But you know, a lot of times when I'm seeing it, it's so light that it's not making those dudes as powerful as they could be.
Yeah, and we see that a lot because everybody wants to start, well, I need to start with no weight on it. I'm like, no, you need to put weight on it. Like, the progressions will let you know whether you can move forward with that weight or not. But unless you have the weight on there, it's not doing what its intended purpose is.
Well, let's point them towards that definitive mace tutorial that we have on your YouTube and on ours. I mean, if someone were to follow those steps in order, with, you know, we would say probably a minimum of 8 kilograms or 10 kilograms, 8 for women, 10 for men, or 10 for women, 12 for men, you're going to find quickly that even that is a base weight. So and right now, that's what people are using as their work weights.
So it's on both of our YouTubes, but you can also go to kabukistrength.com and under the science or articles place, find Greg Walsh as an author, and that piece is on there with the video embedded as well. So
and one of the things with the mace that we're getting even more and more convinced of is that the really heavy, really organized front pendulum is allowing people to feel the rotating weight, understand like kind of the upright bracing, how hard you've got to pull your hips forward when that thing starts swinging like it means it back and forth. And then when we translate that into the back pendulum and then eventually 360s, the groove is already greased. Versus if you just start the mace in the back, people are like, oh, I'm going to hurt myself, my shoulders are tight, all this stuff.
That's been on my to-do list for a while. I need to go add that to our tutorial, but that's anytime we teach the shoulder rack swing, since visiting you, have always started with that front pendulum. That's been a great addition.
It's just valuable because nothing else moves like the mace, so you really do have to start it at even more of a rudimentary place. But then once you do, man, I mean, we've got we've got some really unassuming people swinging maces that would do the same thing it does to me, which is you guys would just shake your head and be like, come on. I mean, we've got 56, 58-year-old people that have no previous athletic background without even a real consideration for what they're doing, 20, 30 reps at a 12-kilogram mace 360, but like crisp, perfect. We're not talking like, for the money and the glory reps here. We're talking like perfect, organized, in training reps.
Yep.
Well,
and they're not preternaturally strong. They're just well trained and specific.
Let's talk a little bit about application for this, because you're using it with a one population. Luckily, we've been able to get into a lot of different markets. So, we've got a bunch of Major League Baseball teams using them, a couple NFL teams, one NBA team, several different Olympians as far as shot put, discus, using them. And obviously, again, martial arts. I don't know. We're not in hockey. We haven't been in hockey.
Yeah.
Hockey and tennis.
They'll find you. They'll find you after this.
Exactly. But, the value is so much like, still there's some people think that it's like, because I'm a power lifter, they're like, well, that's a powerlifting tool. And I'm like, no. This is an everybody tool.
Well, it's literally a medieval weapon that you can exercise with. So if that's not cool enough to like incorporate at some point in your training, like, what are you even doing?
Right. At the end of the day, once you know how to wield this thing, it is just a shitload of fun too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a lot of fun to train with these things once you're good at it. That's for sure. But anyway, back to implementation.
But just think like swimmers. How many swimmers have shoulder health issues, and you just like the application is just so far out there, so far outside of our world to be putting this to use. I mean, it's once you've done it for a few weeks and realize the results, I mean, everybody becomes a fanatic about it. So,
and one thing I think about often is when it comes to some of these high level athletes, the ones that you're working with, the ones that we see maybe underusing the true value of this thing is are they functionally strong and powerful and all this kind of stuff? Absolutely. I mean, these are world class athletes, but are any of them contending that they couldn't use a little more power or rotational strength I guess like torsional strength or power dexterity in their sport, none of them would say that. None of the highest level ones would ever say that they couldn't use more of those things. And the mace is just such a perfect tool for that. I mean, even when you start doing like really basic hand switching drills with that thing, you're teaching yourself skills that no other fitness tool can teach you. And I mean, I think about a protocol for someone that has gotten a beginning mace swing instruction and what I could help them do in 3 months in more of like a linear progression like weightlifting would use. I'm curious to start seeing how that unfolds.
Excellent. Well, I've got you that super loadable one on the way, by the way.
We'll see. We may kill Matt. But it'll be in the name of science, right?
That's right. If it's in the name of science, it's still good. So
that's right. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, and I mean, from a rehab recovery standpoint too. I mean, its value I don't think can be overstated. And I don't ever want to sound like a zealot, but that's coming from someone. I mean, you know, just to quickly run through. I mean, I've separated both of my shoulders several times riding BMX. I've had torn rotators in both shoulders. I have a torn rotator in the left one now. I don't ever move carelessly, but I've just been banged up a lot. You know, I've had two spinal surgeries. The first one was a bust. The second one was a fusion, and the fusion itself went okay, but in the process, the doc touched a nerve and impacted the function of my left big toe. So there's like a 60% neuropathy in my left big toe. So a lot of this function that I've regained, and I mean basically anything anyone's seen of me video wise, in fitness and strength and conditioning has all been performed post those injuries I just listed. So what we're talking about here is, you know, with all humility, I'll say that the amount of recovery and functionality and strength and power that I've reclaimed after those injuries is due to specificity and also full utilization of these simple tools. If I wasn't confident in lifting a bar, a kettlebell, a mace, and body weight stuff, I would still be at the, you know, whatever the doctors throw at you, 15% return to recovery, blah blah blah, from a surgery.
This is exactly what we mean by living better through strength.
Well, yeah, that's exactly right. And so before people say, you know, they say, oh, kettlebells are too light to be a strength tool, or oh, the mace is going to hurt me, or anything like that. Homie, it's just not going to, because I've tried it and it doesn't. You know, I mean, we've got old people that come in broken, and we mindfully and specifically use these tools to turn them into fucking animals. And that's really what our philosophies align on. And that's what makes this whole thing fun. You know, I say this all the time, and people kind of laugh at me, but like, I do not care about training high-level athletes that don't need it. If we get them, great. They're easy to train. All you got to do is point them in a direction and tell them not to lift with their chin up. But the people that we want to train are the people that need it, and the people that are willing to kind of put their heads down and address these details, and just turn themselves into some mean animals. And that's kind of our specialty is that side of the fitness scope.
Yeah. Well, we're starting to get close to bumping on time, so I want to talk about something, and that is your workouts, your 2016 workouts. They're going to be getting posted on breakingmuscle.com. This is a site I used to write for myself, and so if people want to kind of follow along and see, this is not stuff he's writing right now. This is stuff that he's written and used and is proven, and you want to talk a little bit about that?
So basically, we've had a good relationship with Breaking Muscle, and they're doing some cool overhauls for 2017, and one of them is going to be posting our daily training from January 2016, so a fully vetted year. So it's a year we've completed, found value in. I've over detailed every single aspect of what it's going to be. That's going to be available on their site starting at the beginning of the year, and it's available on wolfbrigade.com now. I mean, the outside of CrossFit proper, we have the longest running online daily training program. Since 2008, we've posted every training day that we've done. The early ones look a little different because we were in a sketchy room in a tiny warehouse with very little equipment, but they're on there. So if people want to look at how our training has evolved or what the year looked like, you can go back there. Or if you want to start from scratch, essentially, find us on the Breaking Muscle in the beginning of the year. There'll be some cool new details on there. One of the things I'm working on now that I can't wait to send you guys is the Wolf Brigade Standards and Practices that's going to preface the training on Breaking Muscle. And that's basically saying the same thing the Curriculum Priorities does, which is before you do this, let's do this. Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's not just jump in the deep water with both hands in our pockets. You know,
there should be some sort of assessment process. You know,
I mean, hey, who are we to say? You know, the dude that deadlifts the most in the world and the person that swings the heaviest maces in the world. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Well, go ahead, Greg.
I was just going to say, what else from your guys' end, man? I would love to talk to you for an hour about what you guys are doing for training, but we can do that another day.
Yeah, I think this definitely requires a round two with you at some point.
Yeah, I would love to anytime, man. This is great. I appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely send over that the curriculum priorities you have, and I think that's, you know, if you're willing, that'd be something that we could link in the description of this or wherever we can, so our audience can reach it too. Because this is, it's something that people always ask. Well, what should I do, to figure out what I need? What type of assessments can I do? Well, a lot of the times it's us being coaches and saying, okay, this is clearly a fault. This is a fault. Well, this seems like something that you've already created is something that they can run through themselves and say, wow, I really can't do this. Or wow, I'm really good at this, so it's to be an awesome value. And
one thing we're going to insulate that with is both a short and a long video of each. That'll be on all these sites that you're going to go find. It's going to be a clip for YouTube, and then it's going to be a longer piece. But just so we can see movement standards, and a lot of times if I'm demoing something and I know it's not the movement that I'm best at, I make sure and say that. I don't have any type of ego about the fact that I'm like this perfect mover, but there's a value to watching it and just examining it both ways. So yeah, I'll send that over. I can't wait, and then there'll be some videos to link up with that. And then our Instagram is kind of our touch-in point for philosophy and the quick burst training that you mentioned. We'll put a minute up of something that looks either unique or really hard or just something mechanical that we do a little bit differently. So yeah,
and that's just Wolf Brigade Gym, all one word. Right?
Yep. Thank you. That's exactly right.
We got the Instagram. We got Breaking Muscle coming out. Where else can our listeners find you?
We'd love to get some of that content up under your author page on kabukistrength.com too.
We'd love to, and we're getting better at that this year. I mean, part of the thing that's unique about what I do too is when the gym is open, I'm teaching there. So a lot of times making the content and then making sure that it's worded properly and everything like that. While it's a priority to me, a big priority, teaching classes and making sure that our core group is doing the absolute best they can is going to be my priority. So we'll start bringing people in to train with us to kind of start propagating information, and then we'll get videos and we'll put them on all these sites. Wolfbrigade.com. Has more information than any one single person ever fucking wants to see. That's for sure. Our Instagram is thorough and non-disposable. Facebook is an okay touch-in point. And any questions, please just send them over. We're good at responding, and we like critical thinking. If you want to ask how to squat, don't write. If you have something interesting to ask, please by all means do so.
Excellent. Well, it's been a pleasure having you on, and we look forward to continuing future conversations with you, Greg.
Yeah, we'd love to. Thanks so much. It's great talking to you guys.
Thank you so much.
And thanks again. Can't wait for the mace. You will not be sorry you sent it over.
All right.
Thanks.
Sign it out.